So we have created a table here, right? So this create table is a syntax for creating a table. So we created a table called as employee, and we have columns like employee ID, e-name, salary, department, and their data types, right? Data types is very important for us. Okay. Now, once you create the table, you have to insert the data, right? So for inserting the data, we use something called as insert statement. Okay. So this is the insert statement that we have insert into, and then you specify the table name, note where you want to insert the data. So here I have specified the column names, and then this, and then I specify the values. So this is the syntax, right? So you say insert into the table name, and what values, what columns you want the data to be inserted, values another keyword, and then values. So here one will go to employee ID. So second is e-name. So this data will go into the e-name. The salary, so this data will go into salary, then department number. So this will go into the department number. Finally, city. All right. So this is one way of inserting the data. Now, you can also insert the data without these fields, right? So without specifying this field. So what I can do here is I can take copy this and I can put this here. Now, what I can do is let's remove this. Okay, you don't have to specify this, and let's put some values. Let's change this data, right? So I'm gonna put some random data here. All right. Okay, so now what I'm doing here is I am basically inserting a second record. So I'm going to select this and I'm going to run this. Okay, now you can see that this is a row which is inserted. So now I'll go back and select the data and view the data from this table. So we have the employee table, right? So let's select this and run. Now you should have two records. All right, so you have the second record we just inserted. Okay, so now what is the main difference between this query and this query, right? Here you are providing the field names, and here you are not providing, which makes it look easier, right? And I have said in my previous session that it is a good practice to provide this field names, right? So I'll explain you this in a simple way. Okay, why it is important. So now, see, when you say insert into employee, right? So this basically means whatever the values that you are putting, that should be, the order should be same as that is in the create table. So what I mean by that, so in the create table or in the table, you have employee ID, then you have e-name, then you have salary, then you have department number, then you have city, right? So this, you should have the same order here. So you should have the first value should be employee ID, second value should be e-name, third value should be salary, fourth value should be department number, fifth value should be city. So because you know the table name or you know the field names, you can basically go ahead and use this, so it's easier. But imagine this, you have put this in some script and somebody is reading this and they don't know, like, what is this value, what is this value, what is this value, they don't know which field they are referring to, right? So readability is an issue. The second thing is, like, for example, right, you have misplaced this. So let's say I'm going to take this and I'm going to put here. All right. So I have the first record here as Kane's second record. Now, if I try to execute this, let's see what happens. See, it it threw me an error. It says invalid number. Why it is an invalid number? Because here the first, let me first execute this, right? So the first field is an employee ID. And what did we put employee ID? We said employee ID's number. But what we are trying to do here, we are basically saying the employee first name is basically our first column, we are sending it as a string. So string you're trying to insert into a number column, so it is failing. It is saying that, hey, in this first column employee ID, I'm expecting a number, but then I'm getting something which is not a valid number. This is not a valid number, that's why it is failing. So this is not a good practice. Like, you should always ensure that you provide the field names. Now, here, another advantage of this is basically you can actually provide field names in any order. So in this case, let's say here the first field is basically employee ID, right? But I can basically add employee name, right? And then I can add employee ID, then I can add the remaining fields. So what I'm saying here is, okay, look, this is the order you have to go with. Don't go with the order of the create table, you just go. So this is employee name. So my first value is actually an employee name. The second field is actually a employee ID. So I can basically create, this can be very flexible. I can create any list here and say, hey, I'm gonna put for employee name first, or I'm gonna put salary first. So this is very flexible. So let's add these details, right? And check for ourselves. So let me change this values here, right? So Justin, let's put as 3, and let's keep the remaining values same. So let me select this, and I'm going to execute this. So now you don't have any issue, right? The row is inserted. So if you go back and check, you will see that the third record is inserted successfully. All right. This is the advantage. So another thing that we can do is, like, you don't always have to specify all the fields. So sometimes, like, I don't want to insert all the records or all the field, right? I just wanted to insert employee ID and employee name. So I can do that as well. So let's do that. So I'm going to say insert into employee, and instead of inserting the values for all the columns, right? I'm only going to insert the value for employee ID and employee name. So I'm just going to give only these two, and I'm going to say values. So employee ID, I would say 5, employee name, I would say, right? So let me just execute this here, right? And I'm going to execute this. You can see this one row is inserted, right? So the question is, right, oh, you have only inserted two records. Sorry, you have only inserted employee ID and employee name. So what happens to salary? What happens to department number? And what happens to city? So basically, if you look at this, right, so they will be saying that, it will be tagged as null. So null basically means there is no value in this. So it's not zero. It basically said there is nothing in it, right? There is nothing that has been put in it, right? So this is one other way, right? You can insert as many fields you want. So this is very, very flexible. So this is the reason why it is always advisable that you specify the field names. All right. Okay. Now moving on. So the other thing we talked about, right? See the data types, correct? So it is always important that you need to provide the right data types or the right data into the data type. So otherwise, it will throw an error. So in this case, if you look at this, employee ID is a number. So if I insert anything out on this employee ID, so let's pick this one. I will only insert the employee ID. So I'm gonna say values. Let me insert a value 6, right? So 6 is a number, correct? So this makes sense. I'm going to go and insert it. No problem. A row is inserted. So I'll go back and I will execute this. You will see that's value 6. All the other fields are null. It's fine because we have not provided anything here, right? So now instead of 6, I would put as 6, right? This is basically character or string. So now when I execute it, I will see an error. So it says invalid number. Why? Because here I have mentioned, hey, employee ID is number and it can take up to 2 digits, right? So now I'm trying to insert a string into a number field, and that is why it is throwing an error. All right. So that is importance of defining proper data type. So it has saved you, right? Invalid numbers are not being inserted. Now, this is about invalid format, right? So you are inserting a string where you are defined as number. But now I will insert a number, but I will insert something beyond 2 digits. See here employee ID, I'm saying I can take up to 2 digits, right? So now what I'll do is I will insert a value which is more than 2 digits. So I'll insert a value, let's say 100, right? Now this employee ID only takes a number of two, that is 2 digits, but here I'm trying a 3 digit number. So let's execute this. So what will happen here? See, I have another error. So value larger than the specified precision allowed for this column. So this particular column or this particular fields only allows up to 2 digits, but we are trying to insert 3 digits, and that is the reason why we have an error. All right. Okay. So this is good. So we have inserted the data with column. We have inserted the data without column. Now, every time that you insert, you are inserting one record at a time, right? So I am having one statement here. I'm executing this, and then I am executing another statement. Now, there is a way where you can insert multiple insert commands into a single statement. So that is using insert all. So I have insert all. So what it does is then into where you want to insert. Okay, so let's insert into the employee. I'm only going to insert employee ID and maybe let's say employee name. Okay, and I'm going to say values here. Okay, so let's do 7. Although it's a number, you can still put in quotes. That's not an issue. Then let's say name is Mira. So I'm going to copy this again. And here I'm going to change the name ID to 8. I'm going to say Rahul. Let's add one more record here, right? So let me call it employee ID 9, and this will be James, right? So insert all into the values. Then what we have to do is select star from dual. So dual is a table which is given provided by the Oracle. So we'll talk more about this in upcoming sessions. But let's first execute this. So now you see this, I have three records, basically three insert statement, but I'm executing as a single statement. So if I execute this, you will see that three records got inserted. So let's go back and check. So I'm doing a select start from the table. And here I will see that whatever fields that I have execute or I have added, it's all available here, right? So this is how you can insert the data, right? So you can insert the data one record at a time, or you can insert multiple records at a time. And of course, you need to insert the right data into the right field. Okay, so this is about the insert statement, one of the DML commands. So I hope this is clear, and we'll see more examples in our next sessions.